Hey everyone, just a quick warning. This episode does have explicit language and may not be appropriate for kids. We're in a rental car heading up Route 522 toward Monroe, Washington. I'm driving. Anthony Curcio's in the front seat, navigating. Sort of.
Oh, I'm telling you, relying on me for the directions and everything.
Yeah.
Oh shit, dude, I can do one thing at one time. You want to rely on me?
I can also.
I'm gonna make it easy, man.
I can also throw it on my phone. That's easier.
I mean, really, I can do one thing.
Okay. Anthony lives in Redmond now, an affluent town closer to Seattle. He doesn't get out to Monroe much. What are we seeing? Is this
Dude,
a road?
I haven't been here in a while, man. I don't know what we're gonna see. We're gonna see.
Born and bred?
Born and raised. I'm born in Monroe.
Born
really
in the
born
town.
in the town, yes, during a prison riot, actually.
Anthony doesn't visit Monroe much, but he knows that it's different now than when he was the star of the local football team. Commuters are here now. Money is here.
When I was there, it was kind of like a redneck town. Definitely, kind of like you'd say, farm boys.
Yeah. Beer on Friday nights or whatever.
Oh, yeah. There's not much to do, or there wasn't much to do out here. This would be something to do. See, when I say this, I mean, you just go in there and you start a fire, and people gather around the fire and you drink beer. Boom.
In the woods.
That's it. Yes, in the woods. Fuck yeah, in the woods.
And that would be in Monroe, outside Monroe? Where would you guys go?
Yeah, most of the time in Monroe, or maybe a little outskirts of Monroe. But whenever we went outskirts, it was always fights. Monroe guys always, and I never really have been a fighter, but it was always my best friend, one of my best friends was constantly, he was the idiot that was 0 for 25, but whenever he drank, he was Iron Mike, and then he would just get his ass kicked, and then it was the same thing, every other time we went out, it was he got beat up, and then he's crying. Actually, that guy was involved in, he was the getaway driver, actually.
My name is Nate Scott. I'm a reporter and editor at For the Win and USA Today Sports. This is The Sneak. So far in this podcast, you've heard the story about the crime that Anthony Curcio committed. Or you've heard a story about the crime Anthony Curcio committed. You heard the popular version, the tidy version. The version about a lone mastermind criminal driven to desperation who nearly pulled off the perfect crime. This is the story that, if you've heard about the case before, you probably got. But that's not the story, really. Not the whole story, anyway. Anthony Curcio didn't commit this crime alone.
No. He had some help.
We're in Monroe, standing in the parking lot of the strip mall, the one where the crime took place.
So all this shit actually is the same, except there was a Albertsons or Safeway or something there.
It looks the same, though?
Yeah, oh yeah. This part does, for sure.
Anthony is clearly a bit uncomfortable. He looks around as if to see if anyone recognizes him. 2 young men drive up in a truck and stare at us. I assume it's because we're standing in a parking lot with an audio technician who's holding a huge boom mic, as well as a camera guy. But Anthony isn't sure. He isn't sure about being here at all. He tells us this is his last time he's coming out to Monroe. He says he's tired of doing this, reliving that day.
It is. It's the same fucking story, and it's boring as shit to me. It is. It's the same fucking thing. Really, how many times can you watch a movie over and over and over and over again?
Yeah. We're standing just behind the Bank of America. It's an unusually hot day in Monroe, and the sun is brutal, so we find a bit of shade under some trees they planted behind the drive-through ATM. Morning of, you wake up early, 3 a.m., 4 a.m.?
No, I woke up at well, actually I must have, because I left at 5:30.
Okay.
And I went into my daughter's room. It was really emotional for me. I was really like numb. I was taking so much shit that for me to be emotional was actually pretty rare. I mean, I remember I was like praying, like, dear God, please help me knock off that. I mean, I don't know what I think I said, please just do, I said, please do what's best for my family. Like even me, I wouldn't ask to have help for robbing it. Dear God, please help me rob this armored truck. It's what's best. So I leave, and a lot of, thoughts are going through my head.
Anthony had a lot to think about. Not only about robbing the truck, but because a big part of his meticulous plan had changed at the last minute. The man he says was his partner in planning the crime had backed out the night before.
I say, it's on tomorrow. And he gave me a couple excuses, none of them saying that he's, scared. He just basically said that he had something else going on, like a meeting or some shit. So I was pissed. I was really frustrated because that threw a big, curveball at everything.
Anthony's original co-conspirator was out, but that man's involvement in this story is not over. Not by a long shot. That was all to come, however. At that moment, Anthony still needed a getaway driver. He also decided he wanted a lookout. So the night before the crime, he says he called in 2 guys he knew.
I'm not just calling any random friend. These are guys that I've either done something shady with before, they've worked for me in the past, something. But they're also guys I grew up with.
A lookout and a getaway driver. The driver was the guy Anthony went to those woods parties with, the one who always got into fights. The one Anthony referred to as Iron Mike, which I'll admit I stupidly thought was his real name for a second. Mike. Mike who?
No,
you call Iron Mike.
Iron
sorry,
Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson Punch-Out.
Yeah, I'm an idiot. Anyway, Anthony had his team, thrown together as it was at the last minute. According to Anthony, he and the getaway driver, Iron Mike, gathered together that morning at an apartment a block from the Monroe High School football stadium.
I think I just explained it again, like, okay, you're going to drop me off near the bank right now, and then you're going to go and you're going to wait for me at this spot. Do not leave. If you hear sirens, do not leave.
Iron Mike would drop Anthony off. The lookout, he would get there on his own and keep an eye from across Route 2. It was time. But right from the start, Anthony's meticulous plan, there were issues.
Well, as soon as I walked around, I saw these guys, and they're all crowded around. I was like, God, really? These guys showed up?
It was the people who had responded to the Craigslist ad. They were there. A lot of them.
And I kept thinking, I was like, God, why did I do this? I just hired myself a bunch of witnesses,
Anthony had told them to meet at different times in different places around the parking lot, but many showed up early, and once there, they did what people do. They went and congregated with the other people dressed like them. They were all huddled together behind the bank, and then they saw Anthony.
So they thought I was like, a guy that, is wearing the stuff. He obviously works for this city. I'm going to go ask him. And so I got 2 of these guys following me around. And so as soon as I saw him coming up to me, I was like, fuck. And I wrap back around, and that's when I tuck in, and I basically go behind this, what is it called? Whatever.
So you're running away from
the
own people that you hired to be distractions in your bank.
Absolutely, yeah.
Anthony hid, and eventually the workers gave up and went back to their group. Then the Brinks truck came. It was time.
I must have, maybe I hesitated some or whatever, because I end up almost going to the front door when I just reach my hand around by his face and give him, a dose of the pepper spray. And I kind of just stay on him for a little bit, maybe 3 seconds or something. And he goes to a corner and goes, puts his hand over his head. I don't know if he said something or what.
You don't remember if he made a noise?
I don't. And it sounds really what do you call that? Not selfish, but it's a real arrogant, not arrogant. Anyways, no, I don't.
Self-centered?
Yeah, self-centered. But it was just.
Do you think that you purposely forgot that part?
I don't know. I don't know. You know, and I wrote him a letter. And I don't know how much, like, I really did fuck him up.
So you run down? Yeah, I do.
Can we not just go over there?
I think we can, and see if someone yells at us.
It's just about filming. You can't film, what is it, on private property, but you can film standing here of us, right?
Anthony and I are walking toward the park where he made his escape, the one behind Mitch Ruth's office. We've got our camera guy as well as our audio engineer with us. The park is now owned by the Fraternal Order of the Eagles, and they have cabins and campers on the property. There are signs posted all over the place saying it's private property, and we're not supposed to enter. So Anthony enters, and I follow him.
Yeah, so I might have actually come down. This has changed a little bit.
So we're kind of for people who can't see, we're on a green bank there's kind of like a 6-foot drop down to the water.
Which was not this.
And there's a kind of a little turn in this river where, yeah, there's this group of rocks, and yeah, you could hide something. What were the cables made
You
out
could
of?
hide an inner tube.
What color was the inner tube?
Ridiculous, man. The inner tube was yellow.
It's like a bright yellow inner tube.
Why?
I'm just curious.
Yeah, yellow inner tube. It wasn't mine. It was a stolen. That was the worst thing about all of it. It was a stolen inner tube. I mean, imagine, like, who steals a fucking inner tube?
Yeah. We're now at the bank of Woods Creek. The sound you hear is cars going over us on the Route 2 bridge. This was where Anthony got in the inner tube. On the far side, he got out, dropped the walkie-talkie, and started lugging the cash up the steep embankment up to the parking lot for Al Borland Park. It wasn't an easy climb, and Anthony's adrenaline was waning.
It was like, oh my God, I can hardly breathe.
We get up to the parking lot. Across the street leading in, there's a random lone house that sits there. On the other side of the house, it's more of an industrial zone. The house is odd, out of place. In 2008, that house was vacant, and Anthony had access to it from his realtor practice. That was where Anthony had his getaway driver waiting for him. So let me ask you, why not just hang out in the house?
Why what?
Why not just hang out in the house?
When I hang out in there, rather than
Get in the getaway car.
I like where your mind's at.
I'm sorry,
I could have set up an appointment with like an older woman to preview or look at this property right at the same time, like 5 minutes after the robbery happened. I could have just sat there and acted as a real estate agent when the cops come. And as long as I could keep my cool, it would have been fun. It would have been totally fine. It's a good idea. Proud of you.
Don't be proud of me for that.
That's what I did wrong. I know what to do now.
We're driving down Main Street in Monroe. This is across the highway from the strip mall, a different part of town, and it feels very much like a main street. There are shops, restaurants, people are walking around, chatting with each other on the sidewalk. It's quaint. This is where the driver freaked out.
Now I'm in the trunk, he just starts panicking. He's like, man, I can't do this, man. Total mental breakdown. Thinking that everybody that's driving by knows that there's a guy in his trunk counting money or looking for this thing. And I am trying to be the voice of reason to this guy right now.
And you're yelling from the trunk?
I'm yelling from the trunk. And I remember I was just like, turn up the music and sing, act like you're singing with the song. Please.
It didn't work. The driver kept freaking. And then he stopped and popped the trunk. Anthony somehow slammed it back shut from inside. Then the driver pulled over again and once again popped the trunk.
That was it. You got to get out, man. You got to get out. I mean, I just remember it's horrible. And then The car saw, you know, the person behind us. There was someone like right behind. Imagine seeing that.
Anthony left the money in the trunk, got out, and started walking. He made it to an apartment building where he snuck into the laundry room and grabbed a white collared shirt to put on. Then he walked to the realty office and asked to use the phone.
You know, I'm close, and I make the phone calls. Getaway driver doesn't answer the first time. Call again, he answers. As soon as he hears it's my voice, he hangs up.
Anthony's truck was parked just over a quarter-mile away. He could have made a run for it, but there was something directly in his way. The Monroe High School football stadium. He didn't think he could make it, so he kept making calls. The getaway driver still wasn't answering, so Anthony called the other man involved, the lookout. Also, it turns out that lookout, he never actually looked out at anything. Anthony says he found out later that the lookout had bailed and never actually showed up at the Bank of America that morning. The lookout did answer his phone, however, and told Anthony he'd be there in 10 minutes. But now Anthony had to wait. And the office, it wasn't empty.
So yeah, it was easily 10 minutes, and during that 10 minutes was when all the real estate people that were in there, employees and other, you know, clients or whatever, they went outside as soon as they heard the helicopters, except me. And so now it's like, oh shit, more of this psychology or sociology. I have to get up and go with the cattle, otherwise I stick out. So I go out there and I stare up at this chopper who's looking for me. I'm just trying to smile, you know, and I'm just smiling, no, whatever. And I'm just, you know, please, hurry up.
Eventually, Anthony would get picked up. He'd get to his truck, then drive a few towns over to meet up with the getaway driver. He says he then confronted the driver there, but it was a short-lived fight. That guy wasn't worth it. Plus, Anthony had something in place to keep everyone quiet. The walkie-talkie he dropped.
And the whole thing about, like, the walkie-talkie is I didn't want to, like, throw it. I wanted the cops to know that there was 2 people or more because of, basically, I wanted fear to be in the people that I was doing it with, so they just keep their fucking mouth shut.
Anthony had pulled it off. It hadn't gone exactly according to plan, but he'd done it. And he'd left himself insurance to make sure that everyone kept their mouth shut. But then the homeless man talked to the police. And Anthony started spending money. And no one kept their mouth shut. The Sneak is a project of For the Win and USA Today Sports. It is produced by myself, along with Anthony Pacillo and Pat Shanahan. Audio engineering and sound design from Chris Bowerbank, and our sound recordist is Josh Savare. Research and additional production from Daniela Schneider. Our executives are Kate Gutman and Mark Hyland. Thanks to Emmanuel Lozano, Joe Myers, and the Monroe Police Department.
Hey sports fans, if you want to see more videos like this, check out some of our other ones right here. And if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and stick around for more from USA Today Sports.